The October surprise is officially here. For those that aren't familiar with the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, he actually spoke at the most recent Trump rally in Madison Square Garden, and things kind of popped off. Now, Tony Hinchcliffe, comedian and host of the popular podcast Kill Tony, was a guest speaker at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Hinchcliffe is known for cutting and edgy humor like these jokes from the roast of Tom Brady.
Kevin is so small that when his ancestors picked cotton, they called it deadlifting. Nikki has such a bad eating disorder, the industry keeps shoving her down our throat. Sam J, everybody, killed. She is a black lesbo, which means she doesn't eat pussy. She, oh, hell no's on it.
Which, within the confines of something like a roast, is actually pretty funny because this particular style of humor is meant to be offensive. However, at a Trump political rally, Hinchcliffe decided to say these jokes.
Black guy with a thing on his head? What the hell is that, a lampshade? I'm just kidding, that's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun, we carved watermelons together. It was awesome. When it comes to Israel and Palestine, we're all thinking the same thing. Settle your stuff already. Rock, paper, scissors. You know the Palestinians are gonna throw rock every time, but you also know the Jews have a hard time throwing that paper. You know what I'm saying? These Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Needless to say, folks became immediately upset with the comedian. Democratic vice presidential nominee Governor Tim Walz called Hinchcliffe a jackwad, and U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat with Puerto Rican roots, called it super upsetting. Florida Republican Rick Scott, up for re-election this year in a state heavily populated by Puerto Ricans, wrote on social media that the joke bombed for a reason. It's not funny and it's not true. Puerto Ricans are amazing people and amazing Americans. I've been to the island many times. It's a beautiful place. Everyone should visit. I will always do whatever I can to help any Puerto Rican in Florida or on the island. I profile figures like pop star Bad Bunny and his 45 million Instagram followers, along with actress and singer Jennifer Lopez, singers Luis Fonsi, and Ricky Martin, as well as journalist Geraldo Rivera, quickly condemned the comments on social media, calling them inflammatory and out of touch. Hinchcliffe has replied to criticism, saying Waltz and AOC have no sense of humor, and it was reported on Monday Hinchcliffe used the Puerto Rican line at a set the night before the rally at the Stand Comedy Club in New York City, and it only received a handful of awkward chuckles. The comedian told the audience he would be performing at the Madison Square Garden rally the next day and said multiple times during his routine that he would be getting a better reaction tomorrow at the rally. The Trump campaign was asked Monday on Noticias Telemundo whether it was aware of Hinchcliffe's jokes in advance. Vinica Rodriguez, the deputy director of Hispanic communications for the Republican National Committee and the Trump campaign, said in Spanish that they don't have absolute control over what speakers say, though she was asked about the fact that Hinchcliffe was reading from a teleprompter. On Monday, Trump's campaign referred NBC News to senior advisor Danielle Alvarez's statement on Sunday, which stated, "This joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign." Battleground state Pennsylvania, where polling margins show a razor-thin race, is home to the third largest Puerto Rican diaspora in the country. More than half of the nearly 580,000 eligible Latino voters in Pennsylvania are of Puerto Rican descent. Considering that the last presidential election in the state was decided by less than 81,000 votes, Puerto Rican voters could be decisive this year if they turn out, according to the Latino Policy and Politics Institute at UCLA. All right, man. So here's the thing. There's a lot going on with this entire situation, and I think there's a lot that needs to be kind of addressed. I heard a really good breakdown from a battle rapper that I know here on YouTube, Zed Tabani. If you aren't familiar with him, you know, he does something called Freestyle the News. Very, very good show. Really enjoy what he does. But he did a very good breakdown specifically about, it's not always just about the context of where the joke is placed, but the context of where the joke is being told. There's a really famous, I'll come back to what he said about that specifically. There's a very famous line from Richard Pryor who says, you know, anything can be joked about, anything can be funny, but you better be fucking funny. It's essentially his quote. So what Zed specifically said as a battle rapper is that when you're in a battle rap, you know, you might get a situation where someone is making maybe some off-color comments.
In different settings, jokes and bars land different ways. If I go to a battle rap, I'm expecting somebody to say racially charged, fucked up things about my country, where I'm from, then it's accepted there because those insults there seem like a sign of respect.
There's definitely lines. If you cross too far, you could end up in some serious trouble, but it's understood that you might, be calling somebody out of their name. It's understood that you might make a race joke here or there, things like that, to try and get one up. But again, when you do that, not only are you within the confines of a battle rap, but you're bringing those bars. Like if you don't bring legitimate bars while you're doing that, then you just sound like a bigot piece of shit, right? The same can be just said, but battle raps are essentially roasts to rhythm, more or less, if you think about it. And roasts are the same way. Those Tom Brady roast jokes worked in the confines of, we're all up here taking these jokes. We're in on the joke. We're all in good fun here. We're all ready to be taken down a peg or two. It's understood that they're going to be mean-spirited and they're going to be shitty jokes. And not shitty as in they'll be bad jokes, but like they are meant to cut. That is the point, is that this is a sparring match with jokes, more or less. That is the point of that, is to be mean-spirited. What my issue is specifically with this, and what I think a lot of people are taking offense to, is both A, they really weren't that funny or that overly clever. When you look at some of the other stuff that Tony had said, say, on the Tom Brady roast, some of those things were very clever. You know what I mean? But the idea that black people carve watermelons instead of pumpkins, come on, that's fucking lazy, man. And I have a lot of respect for Tony as a comedian, having seen his career. There's times where I have not been on board, but overall, man, I have such respect for the roasts and the jokes I've seen that him being capable of doing. So then to turn around and on top of that, when you look at a candidate like Trump and you look at what his campaign has been completely full of, and the things that so many people, he's constantly being accused. Folks like to get mad and be like, oh, he's not a white supremacist. People just love to throw that around. But he's been accused of that. So to then go on there and be like, black people are carving watermelons, to say that Jews are cheap, to say that Palestinians are throwing rocks, to say that Latinos don't pull out and just pop out hella babies, and that Puerto Rico is an island of garbage. Like, that's all hella racist shit in a campaign that has been accused of racism. So I think what's so disappointing about this entire situation is not only were the jokes lazy and not funny, but you're also dealing with the situation of, like, you legitimately are stoking the flames. You're not taking the heat off of the Trump, like, just from a political standpoint, just from a campaign standpoint. That's not helping the Trump campaign by throwing even more racist rhetoric in that particular moment. And you could hear, and a lot of those jokes, people were just like, because like it just wasn't executed well. And when you throw in some of the other things that were happening that day, including some of the things that Giuliani was saying about Arab folks and things like that, it was just so out of touch and so fucking gross and so fucking heinous, man. And it's not doing what so many people that support Trump love to say over and over again. The left loves to just stoke the flames. They just love to put all this dangerous rhetoric, and that's why Trump's being attacked, and that's why this, that, and the other. And yet, you're calling people from Puerto Rico garbage. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're throwing anti-Semitic tropes out there. In what world does any of that make any sense? And that is where people get so frustrated with the double talk of, well, you got to stop stoking the flames, but also here's all this racism bullshit. That's why people are getting pissed off and they keep saying things about fascism and racism and white supremacy, is because these are the people that are speaking at Trump rallies. And this is the stuff that they're saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not even attempting to hide it. Like, you're not. And trust me, I grew up on motherfucking Chappelle's show, on the Boondocks, like, just being black in general. We crack all sorts of ridiculous jokes, but time and a place. You know what I'm saying? Time and a fucking place. You're not doing that at a presidential rally with people that have already been accused of being racist. That is why people are so upset. That is why you have people that will say never Trump, because if this is what is allowed to go on, and he does the shit too. Like he said, Mexicans are rapists. He said all sorts of shit. But when this continues to happen, that is why you have people that are like, no, never, not never, ever, ever. And I also hope, just to that point, anybody that was like, I got to draw my line in the sand with Kamala, I can't do it with the genocide and all that. And I understand what you're saying, and I understand that frustration, and that makes complete and total sense, and I hear you on that. But do you see how they're talking? Again, Giuliani, the jokes about Palestinian Torah, do you see what they think of you? Honestly? Like, real talk. Do you see legitimately what they think of you? And I say that to everybody. Like, again, so the things that have been said, the fact that Hinchcliffe, again, calling Jews cheap, that anti-Semitic trope. But you even had Trump saying to Jews at one point, being like, and if I don't win, well, then it's the Jews' fault. The Jews didn't do, like, you like, again, listen. As Maya Angelou said, man, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So with all that being said, man, I'm curious on y'all's thoughts on this. I mean, do you think it was just a joke and people are blowing it out of proportion? Or do you agree that this is just opening up more racist rhetoric? It's dividing people more than it's bringing them together. Because again, nobody's saying you can't make jokes about race and gender and, sexuality and ethnicity and all that. Nobody's saying that you can't do that. I honestly believe that Richard Pryor statement of you can make a joke about fucking anything, but it better be goddamn funny. I think that's the first part, but again, I think it's all about where you're doing it. There's a reason why, like, some of the circuits, like if you do like church circuits and stuff, they'll be like, you got to be able to do X amount of clean comedy and stuff like that. It's very clear going to this, if that is what you believe, that this was an appropriate joke to tell at this rally, then clearly MAGA is telling on themselves, is what I see here. But I want to know what you think down in the comments. Let me know, man.